Hello and welcome to Midday Report, coming to you live from Warsaw. I'm Salia Strzemska. The meeting of top diplomats originally scheduled in London today has been postponed indefinitely. The UK's Foreign Office announced the delay without giving a reason. However, Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andrii Sybiha has met with the British Foreign Secretary, his counterpart, David Lammy. Our correspondent in Kiev, Oskar Terji, has more on the Ukrainian reactions to this news.
Well, all eyes were supposed to be on London today, where US officials were supposed to meet with European officials and Ukrainian officials to discuss US proposals for a ceasefire in Ukraine. That meeting has since been downgraded, with neither Marco Rubio nor the special envoy Steve Witkoff expected to attend those talks, and now the European top diplomats are not expected to attend either. There will be talks on the sidelines of these discussions between Ukrainian officials and the UK's top diplomat David Lammy. However, the main discussions will be taking place between lower level officials to discuss the US proposals for ending the war in Ukraine. Now, the US media, Wall Street Journal, Axios, among others, reporting that the US proposal to end the war in Ukraine would accept Russian control over Crimea and a de jure control over Crimea, and would accept de facto Russian control over those 4 other Ukrainian regions they have attempted to illegally annex. We've already had a response from President Zelensky saying this would go against the Ukrainian constitution and they would never accept such Russian control over Crimea, saying this is our territory, the territory of the people of Ukraine. This will not happen. The EU's top diplomat Kaja Kallas also responded that the European Union would not accept Russian control of Crimea. They would see that as legitimizing an act of aggression, an act of war, something that would go against what the EU believes in. So it seems unlikely the Americans are going to be able to pressure the Europeans or the Ukrainians into accepting this deal that would see Russian control of Crimea legitimized. Now, elsewhere in Ukraine, in Dnipropetrovsk, in the town of Marhanets, 9 people have been killed and at least 30 others injured when a Russian drone targeted a bus in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. So while these talks are ongoing, Russia is continuing to strike Ukrainian civilians and kill Ukrainian civilians on the territory of Ukraine. It's Oskar Terji reporting from Kyiv for TVP World.
Earlier today, US Vice President J.D. Vance weighed in on the Russia-Ukraine ceasefire talks that were scheduled to take place in London today.
We've issued a very explicit proposal to both the Russians and the Ukrainians, and it's time for them to either say yes or for the United States to walk away from this process. We have engaged in an extraordinary amount of diplomacy, of on-the-ground work. We've really tried to understand things from the perspective of both the Ukrainians and the Russians. What do Ukrainians care the most about? What do the Russians care the most about? And I think that we've put together a very fair proposal. We're going to see if the Europeans, the Russians, and the Ukrainians are ultimately able to get this thing over the finish line. Again, I feel pretty optimistic about it. I think everybody has been negotiating in good faith, but it's now time, I think, to take, if not the final step, one of the final steps.
At least 9 people have been killed and more than 30 wounded after Russia launched a rain of drones on eastern, southern and central Ukraine. In the city of Marhanets in the Dnipro region, a suicide drone hit a bus carrying workers from one of the factories, killing at least 9 people on board. Earlier in its overnight strike, Russia targeted the southwestern region of Odessa, inflicting wounds on 2 people in the region's crucial port city. Moscow also struck civilian infrastructure, including residential buildings and businesses in the region of Poltava and Kharkiv. In the latter, a blast caused by Russian drones sparked a large fire, Ukraine's State Emergency Service said in a statement on Wednesday morning. The Ukrainian Foreign Ministry has summoned China's ambassador to Ukraine to raise serious concerns about Chinese nationals fighting for Russia in Ukraine and reports that Beijing supplies weapons to Moscow. According to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, at least 155 Chinese soldiers were fighting alongside the Russian army in Ukraine, with 2 of them already detained by Kyiv. Zelensky also said he had information that China is supplying weapons to Moscow. Beijing has denied the allegations, saying that it had not provided weapons to either party. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian Security Service has announced it has intelligence that Chinese citizens are working at a drone factory in Russia and that it will pass that information on to Beijing as it is, quote, of serious concern and contradicts the spirit of partnership between Ukraine and China. Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski has presented the goals of Warsaw's foreign policy for 2025 to the Polish Parliament. President Andrii Duda and Prime Minister Donald Tusk were both in attendance. Now, our correspondent Kazimierz Łysiak is joining us live. Kazimierz, Sikorski's address showed how Poland plans to respond to the challenges resulting from global instability. What were some of the key points that he made?
Good afternoon. Exactly, Poland has to rise to the challenges that we are now facing, and the priorities of Poland for its foreign policies for this year have changed compared to the last year because of the geopolitical situation across the globe. Now we have a new US President, Donald Trump, who is pushing for an immediate ceasefire in Ukraine with a rather blunt approach to Ukraine and Europe, and we also have tariffs imposed by the US President. So Poland still considers the United States one of its biggest allies, and it was reflected in the speech by the Polish Foreign Minister, who said that apart from security, which is still the biggest priority for Poland, strengthening transatlantic ties is definitely high on the agenda as well. But the Polish Foreign Minister also focused a lot on Ukraine, on supporting Ukraine and continuing to support Ukraine as Poland has for the past several years. And there were some harsh words directed towards Russia. So let's take a listen to what Minister Sikorski had to say to Moscow.
Nigdy więcej nie będziecie tu rządzić.
You will never rule here again, neither in Kiev nor in Vilnius, Riga, Tallinn or Chisinau. Do you not have enough land? 11 time zones and it's still not enough for you? Focus on better governing what, according to international law, lies within your borders. Instead of fantasizing about conquering Warsaw again, worry about whether you can keep Haishenwai.
Czy utrzymacie Haishenwei?
So strong words from the Polish minister directed at Russia, and apart from Ukraine and the security of Poland, the region and the entire European Union, the Polish foreign minister also pointed to some threats that not only Poland but also all of Europe is facing right now. He mentioned the fact that we no longer have many international organizations with power to enforce peace. He hinted at possible reforms of the United Nations. He said that we also need to be remembering about the global south, so continents such as Africa and South America. And he also said that we need to tackle misinformation, disinformation, especially from Russia. So overall, a lot of focus on security in the speech, a lot of focus on transatlantic ties, and a lot of focus on Ukraine and the support that Poland is and will be providing in 2025.
Thank you, Kazimierz, for this comprehensive overview. And on that note, Russian hybrid warfare is running rampant and Europe should be on high alert. This was the warning from intelligence experts at the European Parliament in Brussels. Our EU correspondent Angela Skujins has the full report.
Russia has shifted away from simply sowing chaos to attempting to destabilise European democracies through its hybrid threats. Now, this caution rang through a special European Parliamentary Committee in Brussels on Tuesday centred on European democracy. Now, this meeting was attended by disinformation and hybrid threat experts from around the world that warned those members of European Parliament that this should be the status quo and the EU should implement all safeguards to protect its citizens against these hybrid threats. Now, we first heard from the Bulgarian investigative journalist Christo Grozev, who spoke to the committee via video link, and he mentioned specific examples of hybrid threats in Poland executed by Russia to resemble attacks from Ukraine. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
Sabotage has significantly increased since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Last year alone, Polish counterintelligence arrested 9 operatives paid by Russian handlers for arson, attempted train derailments, and filming all of this for propaganda purposes. A Belarusian operative set fire to a Warsaw megastore on Russian orders, falsely blaming it on Ukrainians.
We also heard from Nina Yankovic. She is the CEO of the American Sunlight Project. This is a not-for-profit aimed to target disinformation in the US. She told those MEPs that she had seen an uptick in sleeper agent attacks in the run-up to the Polish election later this year. Now, these sleeper agents are predominantly Russian bots online that are manipulating and using those weakened cyber laws, using AI to peddle those foreign interference attacks. Let's take a listen to what she told that committee.
This network is absolutely still active and still posting because we have folks like Elon Musk who don't believe that foreign interference is a threat anymore. Lately, it has been posting about the Canadian elections, which are coming up next month, but we've also seen some posts targeting Poland, given its elections coming up.
Now, these experts have advocated for the EU to really ramp up all of its cyber legislation, everything in the Digital Services Act handbook, and to also fund those not-for-profits and to see them as essential functioning institutions that sit alongside those other major crime-fighting networks. This caution, they said, should be heard before it is too late. Angela Scugins from Brussels for TVP World.
And now the latest from the Vatican. The late pontiff's body has arrived at St. Peter's Basilica, where members of the public are now allowed to enter to say a final goodbye to the Pope. Our correspondent Alex Kadir is in Rome. Alex, following the passing of Pope Francis, an elaborate series of rituals has been set in motion. Can you summarize for us what already happened and what is expected in the coming days?
Well, we saw a procession through the streets of the Vatican, bringing the Pope to lie in state at St. Peter's Basilica. The cardinals that will then select the next Pope accompanied the coffin, and applause roared out on the square. Tens of thousands of people, we estimate 20,000 people, are already in Rome to pay their respects to the late pontiff, including two newlyweds from Mexico who came straight to pay their respects to Pope Francis. Clearly moved by his time at the papacy. He was clearly a pope that marked a lot of people in Central and South America, being himself the first pope from the Americas. A really significant move, and it also poses a question as to whether or not the next pope will also be from further afield. He was very much a pope for the global South, for African Christians as well as South Americans as well. So clearly he had a global reach, moving the center of gravity of the Catholic Church slightly further away from its traditional home here in Europe. He was certainly a popular pope for many, a reforming pope certainly for many, which drew some criticism from the more conservative parts of the church. But today is all about marking his passing. There will be mourners here flowing into this city, going to see his body in St. Peter's Basilica as he lies in state to pay their respects. We saw people applauding his coffin as he went past. We also saw people in floods of tears. Of course, this week will end here at the Basilica behind me, where he will be buried. Now, traditionally the popes would be buried in the Vatican itself, but he asked to be buried here at the Papal Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore, where he would come to pray before foreign trips. So what we can expect is certainly a lot of pomp, a lot of circumstance, some very dramatic scenes here in Rome, but certainly a lower key funeral from what we've seen previously from popes as people come here to Rome to pay their respects.
Alex Kadir reporting from Rome. Thank you, much appreciated. And with this, we're wrapping up this midday report. Thank you for watching, and please stay tuned for more.